I'm going to use this video to plug Saving Physical Media because I actually watched this on a disc. It got officially released, which I'm forever happy for because I think physical media is pretty cool, and to have something that was originally going to be a streaming exclusive, well, maybe not even exist at all in the first place, and just to have it physically just is pretty cool. So either way, I sat down for a whole 4 hours and watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. After all of this DCEU marathon, we're basically in the home stretch. We've only got a couple left, and I will say that out of all of the other DC movies, I was most excited to rewatch this one. This obviously, this being 4 hours, I most likely haven't watched it since it dropped 2 years ago. I mean, unless I'm forgetting something that I just don't remember happened. But either way, I was very excited to get back into this and see what I missed, what I didn't remember from it, and just anything from that. And there is a big story to this, but if I'm being honest, it's gonna take a lot out of me to talk about it. Because, well, if you're watching this video, and you've been watching all of the DC Marathon videos, you know the story at this point. I think I mentioned it a little bit in the 2017 Justice League video, and to why that fell apart. But honestly, if you know, you know. So I'm not going to touch on it, everything that happened behind the scenes in this video, because I want to focus on the movie, I want to focus on the final product that we got. Either way, it's not that hard to say that this was the better movie. Like, it's not even close, actually. But, like, I'm not head over heels for this movie, personally. I still think this is pretty good, but I've still got some issues with it. What I will say, though, that this perfectly fits the description of an epic. Again, it's over 4 hours long. Not a much over 4 hours, but it says, I think it's like 4 hours and 2 minutes or something like that. This cut of the movie essentially has the same framework in story as the 2017 version. Superman's death has essentially sent out like a beacon to like all of like the universal threats out there that like the big protector of Earth is dead. So Steppenwolf is sent down to Earth to collect the mother boxes and add a new world to Darkseid's collection, essentially, of all the annihilated planets. So Batman has to form the Justice League and stop them. I still think that the story is okay. I feel like that's just that was gonna be obvious because I had seen the 2017 Justice League. I knew what story we were getting into. I think all the major story beats are still the same. But from a world-building perspective, this is completely new stuff here. Darkseid wasn't even in the 2017 version. And he was in this version. There's so much more characterization of many different heroes and villains in this. And just so much is thrown at you in this movie, and honestly, a lot of it lands. I think a lot of this works. And I guess that's why I'm going to start off with the direction in this, and Zack Snyder himself. Because, obviously, I still liked Man of Steel, but I was pretty critical of Batman vs. Superman, even when it was the Ultimate Edition, like, the extended cut of the movie. And I feel like when you are trying to edit down something that is supposed to be told on this massive scale and just be told like this, it can be to its detriment. Case example being the 2017 Justice League. Now, at least it's obvious to me, if Zack Snyder had stuck on with 2017 and he had still gotten to direct his movie, there is no way that this would have been the final product. This would have been cut down a good chunk. And even then, I think there would still be a little things that I would have problems with. But I feel like this really is the best version of this movie. And I feel like Snyder had something going on here. And I can't believe I'm saying that because this movie, to me at least, I think is easily the best out of the 3 movies he directed. And that's because the full plan finally came into focus with this movie. and just knowing where he was going and like figuring out what he was doing, while there are still character moments that I'm still a little weird with in Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, but they are mostly not present in this movie, and those are the issues I have the most with with these DC movies. I think a lot of the acting in this is pretty good as well. I think out in terms of Batman vs Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League, I prefer this version of Batman more. I think Ben Affleck had a lot more to do in this and more to work with, and I also feel like the writing overall was better for him in this than Batman vs Superman. I also really like Jason Momoa in this. I feel like his Aquaman was the most consistent thing of, oh, I like this guy, in all of the appearances he's had. Even in 2017 Justice League, I didn't think he was that bad in that. And I think that's why the Aquaman movie did so well. But I still really like Jason Momoa in this because, again, I just think he had the right writing. It was also really funny to see Ezra Miller still be a little on the jokier side, but not overkill like in 2017. Believe it or not, I thought of a lot of the comedy that was from Joss Whedon, but like even the snack hole line, which was something I thought for sure was something that Joss Whedon put in, was in this version. And I was a little surprised, but hey, I would say there were less jokes from him, and honestly more of them landed because better takes were used from them. So I just think that's that, and I think Ezra Miller did a good job in this. However, the most improved person in this, the MVP, is by far Cyborg. Like, again, don't want to get into everything that happened with Ray Fisher and Cyborg and how edited out he was in 2017. It's kind of ridiculous to see how much was cut out from him, because I would say he's the heart and soul of this movie, and just really like knocks it out of the park out of everything that he does in this. And I feel really bad for Ray Fisher because he got insanely fucked over at Warner Brothers. And I get why he doesn't want to come back. Like, full disclosure, I understand. And part of me had really hoped that they were able to figure something out, but I really don't see that happening, and I get it. Also, I do think this movie's long. Like, I get it, it's 4 hours. If this is how the whole story was going to be told in the way that Zack Snyder wanted it, I get it. But did we really need the nightmare stuff? Like, even that was some of the more interesting stuff in Batman vs. Superman. I get it. But knowing that the nightmare stuff in this movie was brought on as a little thank you and a tease for what could have been for Zack Snyder's vision is cool, but knowing that this isn't gonna happen, it just felt unnecessary. I also think the visual effects were pretty good here for something that was done by a team at home. Because I don't know how the process was for this movie, but I know a lot of it was done at home, and especially during the pandemic, since this came out like in beginning of 2021, when COVID was still relatively a thing. But it was also it was also nice to see that it looked relatively good. There weren't any there were a couple little wonky things in there, but I honestly didn't care because I got it. It was made during the pandemic. I mentioned this in the Man of Steel video all the way like a couple months ago, but I think the idea of these superheroes as mythological beings, treating them like gods, is a good idea on paper. I think it works better in here than it does in Man of Steel. I really just don't think it worked with Superman. That's the thing with me. Yes, I'll say that great shot of him floating above Earth and soaking in the sun is pretty great. I would say that that's one of my favorite shots in the whole movie. But I think that the mythological being type applied to the other characters better. And it's like there are these gods taking on another god, just like in the flashback sequence they have, which I think is much more expanded upon in that. And I just feel like that was a good thing to do for this movie, and it worked for this because it had the runtime to do it. So now I figure that I have to touch on this a little bit. What's next? I don't think anything's next. Look, I get it. Part of me thinks is always wondering what would have happened if they continued to move on with this. I think it would have just happened. Obviously, the Snyder fans would have loved it, and I hate that this is the one that won me over. The 4 hour like deemed unreleasable cut of a movie that ended up being bad was the movie that won me over on this iteration of DC characters. Like, why? But either way, I don't think the Snyderverse is going to continue. I think it's cool to see that Zack Snyder is still dropping little hints about what could have happened and what the future of the story was, because I'm pretty sure the whole story of what would have happened in the sequels is out there. It's a lot to get into now, but if you want to look it up, I'm sure it's online somewhere. But the story is laid out there. Honestly, I wouldn't mind like a graphic novel or an animated movie out of it, but I don't think that's going to happen either. And either way, Zack Snyder is essentially making his own Snyderverse now with his Army of the Dead stuff, with apparently having like similar terms to an animated series that's coming out he's doing called Twilight of the Gods, which has been announced for a couple years. I don't know if there's been any movement on it. And we even have his new live action cinematic universe. I don't know what the specific term is now, called Rebel Moon over at Netflix. All of this is over at Netflix, where he's got a free reign to do this, and I honestly think that's what's best for him. I think a lot of the ideas that are in here, if applied to original work, would land much better with me, because you're doing them with established characters, and especially with characters who a lot of people know who they are. And I think that's been my biggest issue with all of Zack Snyder's DC movies. So, and I don't have those issues with his other movies. So I think knowing that Zack Snyder hopefully has better things on the way, I am excited for Rebel Moon, and I am curious to see what he's got in store for the future, because he's putting a lot of his chips into Rebel Moon, Army of the Dead, whatever that goes with, and Twilight of the Gods. So I'm here for it, but I am perfectly fine that his run at DC has come to a close. Either way, Zack Snyder's Justice League is his best DC film, I think. His time at DC is brought to an explosive close with it. I do think it has its problems. It's too long. There's a couple of things they stick on just a little bit too much. But overall, I can't believe it's this digestible for a 4-hour movie. I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10 for Zack Snyder's Justice League. I feel like this is going to be one that I appreciate a lot more down the line, knowing that there was a huge chance that we were never going to get this, and I'm grateful that we do have it, and especially that Zack Snyder went out of DC on a relative high note. My question for you is, what do you think of the Snyder Cut? What do you think that all of this is going on? Like everything that's happening with Snyder, whether it's with Rebel Moon and all the stuff he's doing at Netflix. And also, would you like to see this restored? Because I personally don't think it's going to happen, but honestly, you never say never at this point. But hey, this is just my thoughts on it. Yeah, I don't know why I got stumbled up so much on that one. Wow. Well, anyway, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Comment down below and just talk to me what you think of this. What do you think of Zack Snyder's Justice League? And I will see you in the next video. See ya.